Hello and welcome to Faith Matters. This is the show where we take a spiritual perspective on Merseyside life. I'm here in Warrington at the Christian Aid offices and headquarters, and with me is Helen Howe, who is the regional coordinator for this area and the private sector lead for the West of England, and Brian Sweeney, who's a local business person also involved with Christian Aid. Welcome.
Well,
so Helen, we're here to talk about the SALT initiative. You have a business background yourself. This is a business project with Christian Aid. Tell us about it. You know, what's the origin? What's it about?
Yeah, well, if we go back a little bit and look at Christian Aid, we were set up 70 years ago, initially to help refugees after the Second World War. And the way in which we deliver kind of aid and do our development work has obviously changed over those 70 years. So we do a range of development work, we do emergency work, and we campaign against the structures and the systems that keep people locked in poverty. So there's been quite a breadth to the work we've done, but in terms of the way that we do that development work on the ground, that changes over time, and increasingly we are understanding that in order to overcome poverty, which is Christian Aid's vision at the end of the day, is to eradicate poverty, we have to harness the power of the private sector. So, and we've been doing that. So we do that in our development work, and we've been doing some really interesting work over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, which looks at actually how we can help lift communities out of poverty by investing and supporting private sector overseas. And that's been a really interesting piece of work for us. And we've worked with private sector in the UK, so we've also looked at engaging with multinational companies and looking at business practices and looking at getting investment for companies. But really we feel it's a time that we need to focus and look at how we can kind of take that private sector work that we've done overseas and actually how we can really engage the private sector here with it. So I suppose there's been, in terms of drivers behind setting up this SALT business network, there's been this issue of harnessing the power of the private sector, but we also see a real willingness for business leaders to get engaged and involved with, you know, being part of the solution to poverty. So there's a willingness for them, and we feel that there's the kind of a joint learning for us and them in terms of we spent 70 years working, transforming these communities on the ground. What learning can we share with business leaders? But also, you know, what can we learn by working with them? And by coming together in this kind of movement, do we have a bigger voice which will help us, again, tackle those systems and structures that keep people locked in poverty. So I suppose standing back from it, what is the vision of the SALT Business Network is very much about thinking through how we can get a movement of business leaders working hand in hand with a leading NGO, and together, what is it we can do together? So looking at how we can actually impact poverty in terms of business decisions we make, how we can influence within our business communities and at government level here, and how we can bring investment to help support some of this private sector work we're doing overseas. Kind of the name of the network has taken a while to evolve, and we've settled on using SALT. SALT would be the SALT Business Network, really taking our kind of influence from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16, and looking at salt and light and how we like salt and light and how the members of the network like salt and light can bring about transformation within their sphere of influence. So how is it they can come together to use their skills, their expertise and their resources to improve the lives of others? Okay,
thank you. Brian, you're a business person, you're obviously busy, I think you're a business consultant.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
How did you get involved in this? You know, what's the history there?
Well, I suppose I'm typical of any entrepreneur, any small business owner. If there's something going on in the city, it's involved with the business community, I'm interested. So one of the business breakfasts that we had last year, I came along, Christian Aid were presenting at that. I thought, well, I know Christian Aid, everybody knows Christian Aid.
The city breakfast.
The city breakfast, yes, yeah, that's right. So I came along to that particular event and listened to the presentation from Christian Aid. And there was an invitation for questions at the end, and I raised my hand and asked the question. This all sounds great. I didn't know many of the things about Christian Aid. All of the things that Helen's just talked about, didn't know anything about at all. So I was as guilty, I think, as anybody else really. Familiar with the name, but not really what the organisation does. I'd always perceived Christian Aid as being, well, that's the organisation you put your money in the envelope once a year, tick that box, job done. And the other part of Christian Aid being, I work with large organisations or people with bags of money and the time to be able to sort of do something themselves. And my question was, so how does all of this relate to me, a small business owner? And the invitation was, well, we're just starting something new. We'd like you to get involved if you've got the courage of your convictions. And of course that for me strikes to the very engine room of an entrepreneur. Yeah, I've hung myself by my own petard, if you like. I need to be involved with this. So the invitation was, okay, well, we're starting this network, come along and make your contribution to that. So I've been involved in the capacity of in this steering group. I think it's best to describe it as, what is this idea? How can it be engaged? And more importantly, how can we really tap into that community that is the biggest community in the country as far as effective change agents are concerned? That's the small business community. Britain has been known for years and decades as a nation of shopkeepers, etc. That's our background, that's our heritage. And indeed, we are at heart a nation which is run predominantly by the small business community, the 1- and 2-man operations, who are effectively those organisations that actually create change.
And create wealth. And
create wealth, most importantly, of all of the opportunities to engage with people that can make change work on the ground. That is the description of the small business community. That's why I think this particular initiative is a brave initiative for Christian Aid to take, because once you open the door to entrepreneurial thinking and to people who will actually want to take the invitation to make a change, stand back, because that is the community that really are the change makers. We're the change makers in the UK, and I think given the invitation to be more involved, not just to write out the cheque, but to keep your hand notionally attached to the cheque, as it were, and be involved with those changes that you see on the TV, but would like to see, well, how can I be more involved in that? That's what I think really is attractive to this whole new area of marketplace that has yet been given the invitation properly to engage in a way that can make the changes that Helen's referred to.
Okay, so you're a business person, as you've just said, but you're also a committed Christian as well.
I am indeed, yes, yeah. And that for me, as a Christian Aid, you couldn't get anything much clearer in the title really to engage in those two parts of my interest. And you know, to wear my Christian hat, I think one of the key requirements, and I hold every time I sort of look in the mirror, I'm challenging myself in this one. Am I running my business along biblical principles in a way that the Bible describes, and that I'm encouraged by my relationship with Jesus Christ to follow and to live up to? And I think that again engages with this whole concept of how can I use my resources, my knowledge, skill and abilities, and my finances to be a change maker. And it's really because that I'm involved in business that I can see this being a viable opportunity rather than just a think tank.
Well, it was John Wesley, of course, who said a man's duty is, or a man and a woman, I'm sure he meant that at the time, that a man or a woman's duty is to work as hard as they can, to earn as much as they can, and to give away as much as
Absolutely
they can.
Right.
Now, that is the ethic, isn't it?
It is the
Christian ethic in a nutshell. So, Helen, you're obviously in a way targeting Christian business people, but is this initiative open to people who may sit on the edge of the faith or faith in general? Is it open to everybody?
It's completely open to everybody. I mean, I think for Christian Aid, there's no point denying that faith is part of our DNA, and faith will be part of the network's DNA. And Pope Francis said kind of recently that, you know, business is a noble vocation. You know, it's around wealth generation, it's about improving the world, but what we're trying to do is get a set of people who want to be involved in that wealth generation, but within a framework which kind of respects human rights, within a framework which kind of respects kind of our world and that creation. So it's there for anybody who actually wants to get involved and make a difference and contribute to sustainable kind of development of sustainable growth, you know, and be involved and help support those poorest communities. So we're really kind of reaching out to anybody who wants to be part of that solution and come with more than just resources. And it's very much more than about a financial contribution. It's about wanting to be part of it and think about how your business decisions affect those in poverty and how you can use your voice to make a real and lasting difference for them.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to cut now to our commercial break, and after the break we're going to come back and talk about how people can make a real practical difference themselves and just explore this further. So join us for Faith Matters after the break. Welcome back to Faith Matters. We're here at Christian Aid in Warrington with Helen Howe and Brian Sweeney. We're talking about the new SALT initiative that Christian Aid are currently in the process of launching. Brian, why don't you just say a bit more about how, you know, what's the nitty-gritty, the practicalities of businesses, the small to medium enterprises you talked about, but maybe some of the bigger companies that we have across this region. You know, how can they get involved practically, and what's the payback, in a sense that, you know, are businesses going to be, you know, involved with individual projects? How's this going to work?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because at the end of the day, what is going to engage businesses? Well, I think the very opportunity to be able to bring what I bring to the party here as an individual, so whether I'm running my own business or if I'm an entrepreneur within a larger organisation, what sort of triggered that thought in my mind? And what I'm looking for, really, what I'd be expecting to be able for me to engage in with my entrepreneur's hat on, is what impact can I have? The impact that would cause me to focus my activities in my business to influence my customers, my staff, etc., to be engaged in a particular project that I feel as though that means something to me. Now that, to me, just plays to the natural salesman of me, if you like, that if I'm really behind an idea, then I do naturally want to share and influence that with other people through my business. So the initiatives that Christian Aid are looking at, if you like, sort of segregating to the SALT network, so SALT participants can genuinely have an influence on those particular activities, can have an impact in and through their own business, to do probably the most important thing, to generate investments to be able to make those key activities work. Now, of course, at the end of the day, that's what all organisations are wanting to do. Nothing can happen unless money is pumped in to make the engine work, figuratively speaking. But what else could I do? Well, I have knowledge, I have experience, and may be able to have some sort of positive impact using those skills. Certainly not to go out and, you know, sort of be engaged in an engineering capacity. That's not my field at all. But what might I be able to do in the UK through my network of influence, through my contacts, those individuals who may be able to feel that in and through me they would want to engage with my business in this particular practice. That's, for me, probably the most important thing, that I can use my business as an area of influence to make that impact, and to really support the investment with not just money, but with interest as well. Okay,
Helen, bigger companies where there's, you know, a number of staff, you know, 100 plus kind of staff. Is there a way? Are you expecting to involve the staff in a CSR kind of way in these kind of projects? How do you envisage that?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly opportunities for involving staff in this. And we know, I mean, the reality is if you're a smaller company, you may not have a CSR policy, and that's an area certainly where
CSR, corporate
social responsibility. So you may not have that corporate and social responsibility policy, and as you say, and what that should be about, any good kind of CSR policy should be about trying to frame that wealth generation under these kind of bounds we've talked about, you know, so making sure that actually what we're doing isn't impacting people in a negative way. But if you're a larger organisation that's there, yes, we can obviously help and develop that CSR policy and help you look kind of at how that links in globally and where some of those wider impacts might be that might not have been picked up. But certainly we can get involved with employee engagement, and that could be something that the whole company comes together and looks at. I mean, the concept with SALT is that it will be business leaders coming together and they will select a specific project that they would like to support. And we're going to see an example of one of those, I think, at the end of the programme. But there's also, you know, alternatives for companies as well. So we've got a larger company who really wants to enter into a relationship where they pick their own project and select their own project they'd like to support. Then that's the kind of work we've been doing for many years, which is all about private sector partnership. So obviously if one company wants to come in and, you know, support that work, project, that's something we do through our normal private sector partnership. The idea with SALT really is it's much more of a movement, that it's got much more momentum, because we're going to be working hand in hand with business leaders and us as the NGO, really trying to kind of see if we can get those voices lifted and challenge some of our thinking, you know, internally for us at Christian Aid, but also challenge at government level, you know, start thinking about policies. We hope it's a really kind of inspirational movement for people to be part of.
Okay, and what's the connection with the local church? Is there any connection with this? How do you see the local church very briefly involved?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, in pretty much every church congregation, there are business leaders.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the difficulties we have at Christian Aid is we come out and we involve speaking at churches and with ministers, but we don't know who those are. So if you're a business leader, if you're a church leader, you know, and you know those individuals, you know, it'd be great if you can highlight SALT to them. We're really keen to engage with kind of a really wide variety of business leaders. You know, we're really keen to get as many kind of people involved in this and become our founding member base to try and help us, you know, develop and evolve the idea. So certainly by identifying people, but we're also happy to come out and speak. You know, if you know of a local business group or a local faith event that's happening and you want myself or somebody else from the SALT team to come out and speak to your kind of network about what we're doing, we're more than happy to do that.
And you're going to have literature available, website, that kind of thing in due course?
So the landing page is due to be up by the end of February, and we're hoping to launch SALT certainly in Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester and London at the beginning of June this year.
Okay, now we're going to show a short film, which is a Christian Aid film about a particular project. Do you want to just say a few words about that before we get to that? Yeah,
so the film really tries to encompass what we're trying to do in terms of development work on the ground. So I've talked about trying to support local entrepreneurs and kind of budding businesses in some of these deprived communities. But it goes a bit further than that. It's not just about investing in business. What we do when we look at inclusive markets development is we look at what the growth market is in the country, and the example is that we're showing you today is about honey in Kenya. They import 95% of their honey at the minute. But we also look at the barriers that those small producers have to getting to market, look at whether they need help with processing, quality, routes to market. So we look at it really holistically. It's not just about supporting one business person, it's really about supporting a whole growth industry.
Okay, so let's go to the film and watch the film, and we'll come back afterwards.
The buzz of business. These bees offer the hope of a sustainable living for 10,000 small farmers, and it's you who are offering this lifeline. With your generous support of In Their Lifetime, this traditional Kenyan livelihood can become economically viable. There's a huge market for honey, both local and international. But in Kenya itself, 95% of honey consumed is imported.
We have one problem within this system, our people. We don't have any other resources. Those who are here, their resource is only honey. Including other groups, we have over 100,000 beehives in the forest. But we can only tap this honey if we have the resources.
Most of the honey produced in Kenya comes from log hives, and productivity is low. This project will help poor farmers to become more efficient without having to buy expensive equipment.
We need a lot of training, especially in honey refineries and in business entrepreneurship.
Christian Aid's plan is to establish honey hubs all over Kenya. These will centralise the processing of the honey, offer specialist machinery and provide large-scale storage. Crucially, The hubs will facilitate bulk sales and quality control and help foster relationships with buyers. It's at the hubs that normally isolated farmers will be able to share information and discuss enterprises with related products like beeswax and candles and find ways to access loans.
In the forest, we have 368 square hectares. So Mount Kenya forest, we can even put over 5 million beehives because there are very many trees and there are very many bees. If we have the finances and people know that this business is growing, everybody would like to join it.
Bees, a traditional, sustainable livelihood, now a possibility because of your help. Thank you.
Okay, that was an interesting little film to watch. What are the next steps, Brian?
Well, most importantly, we aim to launch in June of this year. Prior to that, or part of that launch, we want to engage with 50 founding members, and those are going to be the influencers of the network. And we're really looking for those individuals who are interested to use the network as a network should be used to engage with each other. So that's what we're aiming to do in June of this year.
Okay, Helen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the network, for the first year of the network, we're setting up an online forum so members will be able to talk to each other. We'll be having regional workshops as well as an annual event. So it should be a really exciting year, and it's really an opportunity to get in and actually be part of this and help shape it.
And an email address where people can get in touch with you?
Is salt@christian-aid.org.
salt@christian-aid.org.
That's right.
Okay, thanks so much for coming on the programme, and it's been
pleasure.
great to talk to you today, and look forward perhaps to hearing some more in the near future. And thank you for joining us on Faith Matters, and see you next time.